He's living in his memory back in the day. He's living in his memory back in the day.
Hi, my name is Jimmy Richardson. I go by the name Jim sometimes. I was born in Brown County, Brownwood, Texas, June 27th, 1944. One of the best jobs I ever had was there in Brownwood when I was still in high school. I was introduced to distributive education, which at that time was a go to school a half a day and work half a day. I was introduced to the grocery business, sacking groceries and carrying them out to cars, kind of a waiting on customers type service. Then when I wasn't doing that, then we were stocking groceries in the shelves. And, as later on, as I grew older, worked my way up into management into Buddy's, at that time Buddy's Supermarket, which I enjoyed the grocery work. And I got started out as a produce manager, and then I went to stocking manager, and then up to assistant manager, and then I guess those was some of the first years of working that I really got introduced to the grocery work, and really enjoyed that work until I guess a year or two after I was married. I was still young and was in a management position, and it required a lot of hours and work, and I didn't particularly care for all the long hours and the work in this grocery market. But that was one of my better jobs I enjoyed more than anything. One of the main events I remember is the assassination of President Kennedy. I was working on the National Guard Armory, building it there in Brownwood in construction work, and I'd got acid infection in my ring finger. I had my high school ring on, and I had to cut my high school ring off because acid was eating into my hand some. And so I got off early that day around lunchtime and went home, and they had on TV that the president had been shot. And that was he was a good president. Well, what I remember, the things he'd done and things he's wanting to accomplish, and it was really heartbreaking to the nation because he was teaching everybody the momentum to be healthy and get out and do things and strive to better themselves. And it was really a heartbreaking experience for the whole nation. Oh, I remember when my grandmother had a wall telephone, and she had the party line that had 4 or 5 different people in the neighborhood on that line, and they had different rings for that particular telephone. And when my grandmother's phone would ring, it'd have just a short ring or a second ring, or depending on what individual was being called. And that was always fascinating to me when I was a young man. As I grew older, got dial telephones in our homes. Went from different styles, from stand-up phones to squat phones to different colored phones, and went through different phases of the telephone. And we've advanced now to the cell phones that it have wireless, and back then everything had to have a wire, but now with the cell phones we're wireless, and we can call. Used to be like a walkie-talkie, that you use a walkie-talkie to talk to somebody a mile or two away, but now we have a cell phone that we can talk across the world to people. And it was really fascinating how advanced the telephone system has become in my time. Oh, I guess looking back, my favorite penny candy was probably the Tootsie Roll. They were small, but for a penny, sometimes you could get two for a penny. That and also super bubble gum. You get it for a penny. And between the two, the Tootsie Roll and the super bubble gum, you could blow bubbles. We enjoyed that pretty much, but pennies were pretty scarce back in those days when I was young. My dad was killed 6 months before I was born, and my mother raised me without being remarried or anything, and we lived off of Social Security and disablement till I was 18, and we didn't have very much extra money, so I would go out and hunt. At that time, you could get a Coke bottle and take it to the grocery store and refund it, sell it for 4 cents, and I would find a Coke bottle to buy my penny candy, and that was interesting to me. Oh, I remember when I was in high school, I was probably a sophomore in high school, that they brought their first black students into our classrooms. At first it was just 4 or 5, and they pretty well come in and sit to the corner of the class, to the back of the class. As same as they would on the buses, they always had their own section in the back of the bus, or in the classrooms they had their own section and their own, they wasn't allowed to drink with the same faucets and have the same activities as what the white people did, but whenever they started introducing it and all, it was acceptable. In the town that I lived in, there was towns that really didn't approve of it, but where I lived, everybody was pretty acceptable to it and was willing to try to be equal with everybody. Where I lived, particularly there, I lived on 808 Avenue C in Brownwood. Just a few blocks from me, we had several black people, families that had students that I've become pretty well acquainted with. They would always walk. We had Dairy Queen ice cream close to us, and they would always come up and get sherbet ice cream. I wasn't fond of the sherbet ice cream, but I liked the vanilla ice cream, but the black people liked the sherbet ice cream. And they would always go to the Dairy Queen by our house and walk home licking on their sherbet ice cream. So I thought, I become friends with some of them, talking to them and all, and so segregation wasn't a big problem to me, and that's the way it was then when I was growing up. Oh, I remember my first TV was, I guess it was, my mother got one that somebody had given her, a used one. When I was small, my neighbor had TVs, we didn't have one. And television was just getting started good, and black and white TVs, or some of them had, the neighbors had what they call a color. They had a color wheel kind of over the screen of the TV, that either red or yellow or green, and depending on the version or the make or model of the TVs was pretty scarce. Not everybody could afford one, and I was probably 13 to 14 years old before somebody gave my mother one. It was black and white, and we had to use an antenna to get receptions. And we didn't have a radio or TV. We had radio stations, but we didn't have TV stations in Brownwood, so we had to pick up reception from Abilene or San Angelo, which was about 70 miles different directions from us, and so we had to use an antenna. My grandmother and grandfather, they had one that you had a remote in the house that you could activate the remote to turn it to different directions. And the ones I had at my house, our first one, just had rabbit ears, and we had to take and hold the rabbit ears and put aluminum foil on the rabbit ears or turn it a certain direction to be able to get reception. And there was mainly 2 channels, one Abilene station and one San Angelo station. The time I graduated, Brownwood had a individual private station started that only televised a few hours a day, and it was usually about local information or local weather and local sporting events, and that came in effect probably in around 60 to 62 in that area. But before then, we only had the 2 channels, and there was only certain programs during the. They wasn't on 24 hours a day. They was only on like 12 hours a day, depending on the station from San Angelo or Abilene. We wasn't privileged to watch TV, but just an hour or 2 at night, a couple of hours at night, and that's all we could watch TV. And not like it is now, where you could watch it around the clock. But that was my experience with my first TV. The President of the United States was to ask me what advice I would give him. I would say that he needs to stop the illegal immigration into our country. I don't mind people being here legally, and I know we all come from different foreign countries, but I think we need to come in legal. And so if he was to ask my advice on what he should do about that, I would say he should try to maintain our borders, and whether it be the Canadian borders or the Mexican borders, to make sure everyone is legal. First president I can remember is Harry Truman. I don't remember a whole lot about him, but the first one I remember that can relate to things that he was doing was President Eisenhower. And but Truman was the first one that I can remember headlines in the paper about. My grandparents, my mother talking about Harry Truman and the things that he was doing. I didn't understand what Harry Truman was doing then, but I understood more about what President Dwight Eisenhower was doing. He was a big military president, and I was more interested in things that he done than what I was with Harry Truman. But he was the ones I remember first. My mother, my first new car, my mother couldn't drive, so whenever I started working in the grocery store when I was in high school, I started earning some money on my own, and I started dating a girl that her father had a car dealership, and my first car was a 1953 Chevrolet, and by being acquainted with his daughter, he let me pay out on a car, which I ended up being a young man driving fast. I destroyed it pretty quick. So that was my experience with my first new car. I think the U.S. relationship with foreign countries nowadays is probably better than what it has been in the past. I know we've had revolutions and all with, with different countries like Russia, and they was a dominant power at the time. Then we've had problems with China and all through the years. But as far as we've had Israel and Egypt and now we're getting into some of the Arabian countries. Seems like we're having some trouble with them now, but we've had few wars. But I think overall, our situations and all now with this, the country relationships with other countries, I think it's better now than it has been in the last 50 years. The best gift I ever got was when I was a kid was a bicycle. My grandfather bought me a bicycle. The reason was that that particular November, and probably I was maybe 10 years old, I had signed up for a drawing at the movie theater to win a bicycle. Well, that particular occasion, my grandfather wanted me to go with him to visit my aunt and uncle in Waco. So he took me on a bus trip, my first bus trip to Waco to visit with my aunt and uncle. And while we was gone, my name was drawn to win a bicycle at the movie theater. So when I got back and was told about it, I was probably pretty upset. Well, I was upset, and because I didn't get the free bicycle, so my grandfather took savings money out and went down and bought me a bicycle for going with him. It was a small bike, but it made me real happy, and I took good care of it. I learned how to adjust the wheels, change tires, fix flats, and I really loved that bike, but I only had a place to keep it was on the front porch, and somebody needed it more than I did and borrowed it. So whenever the police department heard that and found out, come out and investigated it, where they had some stolen bikes retrieved, and they brought me one to make up for the one that I had stolen. So I thought that was pretty neat. I don't, looking back, wondering if I had a nickname. I don't know that I had a nickname. Some of my uncles all called me Cotton. I had a real light blonde hair, and I never did wear a hat and all. Sometimes they called me Cotton. But as far as having a nickname, I didn't have really a name. I made my mother mad at me. It was Jimmy Brent. So, but having a nickname, I don't remember having a nickname. As a kid, I got blankets allowance because my mother couldn't afford to give me allowance. So everything we got through our disability checks went for either paying the bills or buying groceries. The only way I got allowance money was to go out and hunt for empty Coke bottles to resell or to pick up lawnmower jobs. When I was real young, I'd mow yards and all to pick up extra money. That was allowance back then. As far as getting allowance and money given to me on a certain basis of time, it wasn't done back then in my childhood. I think my generation now doesn't receive the respect that we should have. I think up until recently we were taught to respect elders. We were taught to respect other people. Anyone older than you are, you respected them. You were taught to respect people you associated with and give a matter of respect to whoever you come in contact with. That was just a matter of brotherly love and getting by in society, trying to get along with everybody. And as far as respect, it wasn't a major issue. As I've got older, in my older years, I think the younger generation has not been taught respect, and I don't think we receive respect. I think the manners have gone away for now. That's going to take a whole lot of work to get people or get young people to teach or learn manners. When I was young, it was nearly mandatory you opened doors for ladies. You said thank you to people for things that was done or done for you. You said you're welcome. You say hello. You didn't ignore somebody when they spoke to you. You answered them. Just all kinds of different manners that young people nowadays do not have. And as far as being them learning them, I don't think there's any desire for them to learn to be have manners or to do manners. It takes a lot of work and a lot of training and a lot of discipline to do that. One manner I'd like to see revived is respect for women. There's no respect for a woman nowadays. It's disgraceful how men and women treat other women, and that would be one thing I would like to see improved. I met my wife, Wanda, when I was in high school. I was dating her older sister, and as we was dating, I was introduced to her family at a Thanksgiving dinner. We went up for supper one night, and then I met my wife. As time went on, her older sister started dating somebody else and suggested that I date her sister. And I started dating her when I was a sophomore in high school, probably around 1960. We dated and become engaged probably around 1962, September 62. And then we was engaged till July of 1963, and we got married and been married. This is 2016, so we're working on our 53rd wedding anniversary. So it's not common nowadays that people live together that long or stay together that long as a married couple, but that's how we met and grew older together. Oh, what makes a couple successful? It takes a lot of give and take from the man and wife both working together, going through hardships together, working together to solve problems, and you go through heartaches, but you don't give up on each other. You stay focused, and I found out the true love, if you really truly love somebody, no matter how big of mistakes the other one makes, you accept them for what they are and try to work it out with them. And that's one of the main things that the younger generations now and back then are not willing to do or not willing to do. First time they have a little trouble or heartbreak, they're not willing to work out their problems and seal through. And that's what I think that makes a successful marriage, that and a Christian life, staying close to God. That's what I think couples stay together. The one thing that I did that my parents found out later, but to start with, I never told them about it for many years. I learned how to smoking grapevine. And my neighbor kid and I would go out behind the barns, and he had grapevines, and that was one of the first things I started doing, was smoking grapevine. It would burn your tongue, but we thought we was grown up by doing it. But usually my parents found out everything I did because she was close to everyone that we knew, and everything I did they would tell her. So I couldn't really get anything by her. I tried several things, doing things, going places that she told me not to go, and doing things that she didn't want me to do, but eventually she would find out about them. And so my mother and I usually had a real close relationship on most everything. best friend in school was Tommy Horner. He ended up being my best man at my wedding. We run around together, and we dated, double dated together, and we did things together that my best friend and I and friends would do. He's deceased now and gone on, but we still have a lot of fond memories of things that we did. And the best friend that I remember before Tommy was a boy by the name of Wayne Hanks. We were good friends when I was young. We used to play Army and play games outside after dark, hide and seek and all, but over the years I have lost connection with Wayne Hanks, so I don't know if he's still alive or not. That is all. I think the music that kids listen to today is hard to understand. When music in my day, people could sing and you could understand what they're saying. They had usually a mellow tune to the instruments they were playing, and you could understand and have a relationship with the music. Some of the music the kids are playing today, I have no clue what they're talking about. First place, I don't understand the wording, and I don't understand their music. I understand that they don't copy a lot from the past, but I think they should. When I was growing up, I had a favorite cat that called him Tinker. He's a black and white, long-haired cat. But I swear that cat had 9 lives and more. He got hit by cars, he got shot by 22s, he got ran over and got carried off, and he'd find his way back. It took him a while, but he'd come back home. I would be sick with asthma or having trouble breathing with asthma, and he would come and lay on the foot of my bed and know that I was sick, and felt sympathy for me, I guess, because I was sick. He followed me around everywhere I go, but eventually he ran out of lives, but he lived to be about 13 years old, so he had a good life. Telling Carter something 20 years on down the road, I would hope that he is a faithful Christian and stays close to God. That through all my years of experience, that is one of the most important things that I think becomes a person, is his faithfulness and his Christianity. That makes a good solid foundation for him. I know that he would be a good person if he could do that. He would have love for his fellow human beings. He would have love for people he's associated with. And most of all, he'd have love for God. Last chance for a joke. I don't know all the joke. I forgot, but it's a good one. The wife asked the husband, "What do you think of me?" And he says, "It's like the ABCs. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. You know, A is for abundant, B is for beautiful, C is for creative, D is for delicious, E is for elegant, F is for faithful, G is for good, H is for tremendous." Said, "What about I, J, and K?" He said, "Oh, well, I'm just kidding."
We're done. On that, we're done. Perfect timing. The battery just shut off.
That was fun. I like that.